Okay, good evening, dear friends. How y'all doing? So here's the story. A man comes running into the doctor early one morning and says, Doctor, you gotta help me out over here. I woke up this morning, took a look in the mirror. I look horrible. So the doctor says, okay, come, I'll check you out. The doctor says, listen, before we get to the bad news, I've got some good news for you. You've got wonderful vision. Okay. All right. Not my best one, but I was trying to think of a doctor joke. Okay. It was okay? Not bad. All right, dear friends. Good morning. Not good morning. Good evening. Okay, my time is all messed up. Welcome, everybody, to our special summer class. And thank you all for being here. The summer is a difficult time for people to commit to 4 weeks to studying, but we're here. Elke, I think, is the only one who could remember. I think she was the only one there. Our very first year we started doing the courses. We did a course in the spring, and it was called What Is. You remember that? That was I think our heaviest course we ever did. A Kabbalah course, a Jewish philosophy course. I actually lost most of my crowd because it was too much for people. The one course that I felt was like push people away was that course. It was just too much, too heavy. But in any case, whoever survived that could survive anything. And at the end of the course, I said, okay, it was May or something. See you all in October when our next course comes up. JLI headquarters, they developed 3 new courses every single year. I was actually honored to be part of the team to develop this course. I think I have my name printed at the beginning of the book, do I?
You do.
I do, right? Yeah. Instructor Advisory Board. We spent many long hours on Zoom making sure that this course is good and most palatable. So we did 3 courses. Part of the program is not to do a course in the summer. And a few people said, what? We got to wait 5-6 months until we learn again? I think Elke was one of those people. Hello, Max. Welcome.
Hi.
Come on in, take a book. Take a little Danish. Okay. So I said, okay, let's try it out. Let's do a summer course. And I think we had 20 people that summer. We did a 3-week course. And ever since then, we do summer. And you know what? Sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller. But I'm glad you're here because we could still continue studying even during the slower summer hours. And actually, our sages say that the longer days of the summer afford us more time to also study Torah. And everybody's a little bit more relaxed. So it's always a good time. So dear friends, we got a heavy, massive course. This is big stuff. I've never done a medical ethics course before, and I'm very excited. Decisions of Fate. And here's a little bit of housekeeping. Number 1, for those of you who are here for credits, there are a few of you here, it is very, very important that you submit the form in the email. I'm going to resend it as well by tomorrow. It's like that you are registered in the college system that's going to be giving you the CMEs, and you got to make sure every single week to check in that you came. I think there's a 2-week expiration from the date of the class until you could say that you were there. So if you wait till the end of till the end of the program, you're going to be a little bit out. All right. So make sure to follow up with me to make sure that you get those credits. That's number 1. What's number 2? I don't know. There's no number 2. That's it. Okay. Decisions of Fate. All right. So, dear friends, we are living in unique times. The question of medical ethics has never really been as important, as relevant as it is today. And today, I mean, slowly over the past decades and even centuries, more and more possibilities and access and ideas are coming through. And it used to be that if you're not feeling well, if you're facing a disease, God forbid, whatever it is, you didn't have that many options. And today, more and more, the possibilities of what you can do have literally grown exponentially. There's almost nothing you can't do, medically speaking. What can't you do? For the right price, you could kind of do anything. So the question started becoming a lot more, but what should we do? I know we can do it. Hello. Come on in, Craig. How you doing? Take a book. There you go. So we know today that we can do it. The question is, should we do it? And that is where today we're seeing more and more the issues of medical ethical questions. And we're going to be looking in this course at 4 very, very big and critical issues through the lens of Judaism. And we chose topics for this course that specifically speak to what the common man will, of course, face, but more general things that people could regularly face, not like conjoined twins, or there's some wacky, really fascinating cases of medical ethics, but they're kind of 1 in a million. We're talking about things that people really do face on a daily basis. Pretty broad relevance. And I want to just throw out a question. I just wanted to, we'll get to it soon, but people hear medical ethics. Okay, so there's a question. Medically, we could do something. Should we do it? And then there's Jewish medical ethics. Well, what's Jewish about medical ethics? Why does Judaism have a seat at the table of my medical decision with my doctor? Why does medicine have to be Jewish? The doctor should be Jewish, right? Only a Jewish doctor. But medicine shouldn't be Jewish. Does the Torah have a seat when it's coming to a decision, medically speaking? So why is this like a Jewish thing? So some people say, look, listen, Judaism is a very old system of ethics, of morals. So it maybe is it's worthwhile to see what Judaism has to say. Maybe similar to the way you would look at Greek philosophy. Greek philosophy is not medical per se, but it's an old ethical system. They have some really interesting ideas. Let's go see what they have to say about medical ethics. But it's a question. What's Jewish about medical ethics? And why should we deserve to give our tradition that time and patience? Say, I really want to hear what you have to say about this. Who cares? I'll go to my doctor. He's informed, and he'll tell me what he thinks we should do. That's just a question I want you to keep in mind. And today we're going to be talking about experimental treatments, the first of our 4 topics. Now, one more general note. Because this course was speaking about issues that it's very possible you maybe faced that decision for a family member, maybe you know somebody who had to make a difficult decision in one of these 4 key areas. And the 4 areas are, you saw what the table of contents are? So this is experimental treatments. Next week is prolonging life, or sometimes should we maybe not prolong life in case of suffering. That's, of course, a very, very sensitive topic. Lesson 3 is pregnancy and abortion. And lesson number 4 is a body post-mortem. A body's dignity, organ donations, and a lot of things that have to touch with the body post-death. So these are issues that, either we've had to personally make that call, something our family had to, we know somebody who did. And I just want to make sure to put this out there before we begin, that I hope I could succeed, that the tone that comes forward from me and from the teachings that we study is not one of judgmentalism and, God forbid, it's not the point at all to be critical of any decision you made. We're here to simply have a great time learning. It's really fascinating. It's a real joyride, these classes. You'll see there's something beautiful about the way Judaism approaches all these issues on the journey of discovery. But I just hope that, and I want to apologize if in advance, if I ever make you feel uncomfortable, if you ever feel that's not the goal, and in general, you can never guilt yourself for something you didn't know. And we're here to simply study in good faith and with good and joyous hearts. All right? So, okay. With that, we're going to jump into the question of experimental treatments. This is a massive topic, as we're going to explore in a moment. I want to begin with a video, which is going to take us through a case study. Pretty heartbreaking story, but it will help give us at least a case study we could work with for the rest of the class. Okay? So let us begin over here.
When Radha Patel first entered the world, nothing seemed amiss. She was a bright-eyed child who had met her early milestones until it came to walking. She went for physical therapy, but her initial progress suddenly slowed dramatically. Soon after her 2nd birthday, Radha was given a brain and spine MRI and genetic analysis. The results were devastating. MLD, metachromatic leukodystrophy.
Metachromatic leukodystrophy, or MLD, is really a devastating condition. It's a single gene disorder. Children are born normally, but in the most severe form of the disease, after a year or so, they start to lose normal function. They stumble, they lose the ability to walk, they're confined to wheelchairs, they have epileptic seizures. And in the most severe form of the disease, 50% of children unfortunately die by the age of 5, and there's almost 100% mortality by the age of 10.
Radha's prognosis was grim. The Patels sprang into action, researching fanatically for a cure in the race against time. Surely, they reasoned, in an era of gene editing technologies, there must be a cure for a single enzyme deficiency. Sure enough, Shire, a biotech company specializing in rare disease solutions, was developing an MLD treatment. But there was a catch. Medicines require extensive testing and collaboration. The good news was that Shire had started the process. Their phase 1 trial delivered the required rudimentary degree of safety and effectiveness. Shire was gearing up for phase 2, a comprehensive trial to complete the process. The bad news was that the second trial would occur in several months' time, and that would be too late. For the drug to be effective, Radha needed it immediately. But the Patels were optimistic. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration runs an expanded access program, also known as compassionate use, that approves investigational stage medication. At the time, the program worked like this. A doctor with a terminally ill patient who had no other treatment options could ask a pharmaceutical company for an investigational drug that had undergone a phase 1 trial. If they agreed, the doctor could apply for FDA's consent. With those 2 approvals in hand, the patient could access the coveted cure. On their end, the FDA simplified the procedure and granted almost all requests. However, getting the companies to agree was another story. Companies need to demonstrate that their products are safe for public consumption. They are reluctant to provide a drug prematurely outside of a clinical trial. What if the patient suffers injury or death for reasons not directly related to the drug? Will that unfairly torpedo their chance of receiving FDA certification? That's a valid concern, which the FDA has addressed, but for some companies, it is not enough. Corporations have another fear. If they freely provide individuals with experimental drugs, they will have a hard time finding candidates to participate in their trials. Put simply, they might save a few lives in the interim, but fail to complete a drug that could save countless future lives. Is that concern valid in a case like Radha's? Certainly not. If a patient with a fast-moving disease is not treated immediately, they will be unavailable for future trials. Radha's doctor asked Shire for the drug. To their dismay, the request was denied, with no clear reason provided. All approaches to the company were rebuffed, and Radha's only hope was dashed. The federal government has since allowed terminally ill patients and their doctors to bypass the FDA.
Good news, in my opinion, actually unadulterated good news. The right to try legislation has passed the House. This bill allows terminally ill patients to try experimental drugs and treatments that may not have received FDA approval.
However, it refuses to force the hands of the pharmaceutical industry, and the keys to life remain in the pocket of individual corporate decision-makers. This leaves us with some dilemmas. Experimental drugs can be highly potent. They have not yet been approved as safe and effective. Is it appropriate to supply them to people suffering from life-threatening illnesses? And if so, under which circumstances? And is it appropriate for governments to compel drug companies to provide access? If so, under which circumstances?
So there we have our story. Pretty heartbreaking. Here's a girl. There's a drug in development, and the company says no. Okay, so let's try to chew over this story a little bit over here. And the video discusses a lot the pharmaceutical company's role in denying or allowing, and should they be forced to allow. Those are interesting questions, but I feel those are like policy questions, and that's a little bit beyond what we want to do today. But let's just try to think about it for a moment. Here's a drug that is in development. Hopefully, it's being tested, already passed phase 1. Hopefully, it could give a cure for this horrible disease. The company is saying no. I'm just wondering, Why would a company say no? What would you say? What are some arguments? And I think there are some valid arguments.
They gave two during the show.
So first of all, the video itself said that what?
But one of them was that that it may undermine the marketability of the drug if by happenstance the patient suffers a setback unrelated to the drug and people associate it, and that's bad PR.
So the last thing that Shire needs is that they're putting in millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they have this carefully watched, and the whole test phase is done very meticulously. And all of a sudden they'll say, we'll be nice to this family, we'll give you the drug. They're not part of the test phase. And all of a sudden this girl, I don't know what, she has a problem with it. Next thing you know, the family starts suing them, goes to the press, and now Shire is tanked. That's the last thing they need. Those who are here committed to the test trial will work with you. But we're not going to be nice and put our own future and the future of healthcare on the line for this one person. That's an argument. Okay, what else?
The other argument was that some, I didn't understand exactly how this worked, it didn't seem material, but that by allowing people to take this drug outside of a study, they would lose too many potential participants in a formal study.
Oh.
They would have been let off.
Even though this morning we had somebody who's right now doing an experimental treatment. He passed phase 1, he did phase 2. And he didn't think that was such a big concern, interestingly. Yeah, just this morning we had somebody who this class is actually real life for him. What was that?
One of your students.
Yeah. And he said that there's so few people can actually make the criteria for the test trial that they're already so low, and all those other people, why shouldn't they be able to get it for? Meaning those people, the company doesn't even want them. So that was his argument. But okay, what else? So those are two arguments. What else?
Couple reasons actually. Number one, let's say they give the drug to the girl, it doesn't work. It doesn't look good enough for them.
Oh, so just on the most basic level, doesn't look good.
Yeah, like, this drug doesn't really work, So maybe maybe if they did it to a number of people and the FDA is like, oh yeah, this drug doesn't work, and maybe they did it for 10 people and they had some, they had some morbidity from it, they had injury from the drug.
Oh, that's a whole nother argument. What happens if something actually goes wrong from the drug?
Right. So they're like, oh, maybe it might affect the FDA potentially, or, I don't know how these pharmaceutical companies work, and they spend so much money on these drugs, and they come out and they charge so much money for these drugs too. I mean, there's also a financial consideration for this company that's spending tens of millions of dollars, developing a new drug, and they're just going to give it out for free.
Right, and then it's liability on them if something goes wrong.
The other real issue is that, and truly, I think this is the big issue, is that when you want to prove that a drug works, you have to do a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. Now you're just giving a drug out randomly to somebody and saying, well, did it work? Oh, yeah, sure, well, now this drug works. And that's not really how you want your physician to direct you. You want objective evidence that's not biased about, as many people as you can get in a trial, half get placebo and half get the drug. And they're blinded.
So you're saying something very interesting, but this morning...
And the physician are both blinded to the drug. No one knows what they got. The physicians don't know what they got. And that's the only way to have...
To really test it.
A valid, study on a drug to know whether or not it works. And every drug has side effects. I mean, I guarantee this drug has side effects.
Yeah.
Every drug has side effects. Aspirin has side effects. So...
Here's the interesting thing. The guy from this morning said that if it's about a terminal illness, which is like in this case with Shire, there is no double-blinded placebo thing. Everybody gets it. It's the only chance. The company can't take somebody in and say, we're going to give you a trial treatment, then they give them nothing, giving them M&Ms.
Especially when it's a disease that's so rare, you don't get statistically significant results.
Right. So, that's also. So the right to try, what are some arguments against, which is what we're going for? Why should a company be able to say, and not just out of greed, but really, we are uncomfortable giving this to you. There's a few reasons over here. Number one, and I think this is maybe the number one reason over here, it is simply dangerous. If I run a company and I'm developing a drug, and I know these drugs are highly potent, they are genetically editing enzymes in your body. we're messing with your system inside. Hopefully, it will cure the disease. But what else could it do in the body? Who knows? It could wreak havoc in a body. So there's a system, how we do it, that people come and they'll sign a paper that they're willing to be part of a trial with all the risks involved. Okay. But here comes a family with a young little girl and says, give it to me. We need it. We want it. I have no clue what I'm giving you. I'm giving you highly crazy potent stuff. It's dangerous. Could I give it to you? So this is an ethical argument that a company could make. The board could say, on whose responsibility is this? And it's not only about getting sued, it's an ethical question. Is it right for me to give something so potent? There's another argument, which is what you just said, Craig, can maybe be ineffective. And therefore what? The company can, number one, say, we have no clue. We don't want to start getting the family all hung up on this thing, which maybe could be doing nothing for them. And that's not right to do for them. And maybe it's also bad for them. Maybe we're building up false hopes. We don't want to do that. So maybe just the company will say, we're just not doing it. Wait till it goes to market. We don't want to have anything to do with giving it out, right to try, compassionate use, which is, they could argue is compassionate from the first minute. But in the long run, it's just setting up this family for failure and disappointment and disillusionment and all that bad stuff. What are some arguments for? What would be some arguments that, no, if a family comes, a person comes, says, we want the right to use this test drug. Let's take it.
No chance.
You're saying, well, what do you got to lose?
I would say none of those arguments against make any sense at all.
Oh, you're against. Go for it.
Well, because every single person that's in the trial faces
Right.
those same
Oh,
things.
but the company could say, we've officially gotten into a relationship with these people,
I understand.
and they're willing
That's
to.
easy solve. They
So-
go into
so-
a relationship
so-
with the child's parents.
They can go
But the
into
right to
the
try is
same
not that. The right to try is we give it to you and goodbye, Charlie.
No, I know, but they can be in the same relationship without being part of the trial.
Right. Yeah.
They can do, other than that, they can sign all the paperwork and waiving their.
Right. I'll just tell you, or it could just be, meaning from a corporate perspective, the company would be like, we don't want the headache.
I mean, everyone in
We're
the
not
trial
interested.
is getting false hope and potentially unnecessary suffering,
Right.
potentially ineffective, potentially dangerous. They're already doing that. to all
Right.
these people.
So you're saying the argument is let people just try it at their own discretion,
Well, if.
and there's no
Under
difference
supervision at their own
If they're
discretion.
terminal, for sure.
if they're terminally ill. Right. If they're terminally ill.
Right, right.
In this case, Rada, the parents come and say, we want to give something to our daughter. She's facing a terminal illness. What did the video say? She could die by 5 years old, maximum 10 years old. Certainly by 10, good chances by 5. So,
Well, let's say the drug comes to market 2 years later, and it costs $500,000, maybe $1 million. Should you just get it for free? I mean,
that's another question.
but I'm saying, like, there's no reason, but if company's investing a whole lot of money, in developing this drug, so should they be forced just to give this medication out for free?
That's another thing. There has to be a incentive.
Suggested that, to arrest her disease, they had to give her the drug now.
It had to be right
rather
away.
than waiting on it, notwithstanding she'll die by 5, she'll die by 10, but if she doesn't get the treatment now is what they suggested, she will die by 5 or 10, or whatever the ordinary course of disease. It's not like you can wait for approval and then give it to her when she's 8 years old.
Right.
And
So we don't have that the comfort of time to wait around. So here's arguments for. Number one, let people make their own choice. People have a right to make their own choices. It's a free country. If somebody says, I'm willing to put the risks for my daughter, for myself, I'm facing a terminal illness, I want to give it a shot. Let them do that. So all these things are very good arguments. You don't have to police other people. And then also there's a very big argument out there that all these regulations with the FDA and all this bureaucratic red tape is not helping nobody, and just get rid of it. It's an argument. Okay.
But it wasn't
If I got it,
What was that? But FDA, but first of all,
the FDA is all in, just the company's not in.
so from what we've seen, the FDA truly said, yeah, you're right. For compassionate use, we're backing all the way out, which is so atypical for the FDA. But they're like, listen, you've got a daughter, and you don't have time to lose. We're not going to sit around playing with you if you want to try out trial drugs. Okay, so the question of should a pharmaceutical company give it or not is not so relevant to today's class, but I wanted to bring on the table a little bit of the tension that's present when it comes to experimental drugs. Experimental drugs are a closed box. No one really knows what's going on. We know for a fact they're highly potent. This does something dramatic to the human body. It could do something dramatic, which will bring about healing. There could be side effects, which could be horrible, disastrous, can maybe even kill the person, and maybe it's totally even ineffective. Nobody knows. And it is that tension that I want to discuss today. But before we do, and in order to really understand the issue of taking risks when it comes to health, I want to back out a little bit, get a little bit of a bigger picture. And I want to go back to that original question I mentioned to you. What is Jewish about medicine, morality, and ethics in medicine? Right? Since when is medicine a Jewish topic? So you could say it's not a Jewish topic, but as I said before, why not? Let's look at Judaism. I'm sure it has some nice things to say. I think most people think of it that way. Judaism doesn't necessarily tell you how to, I don't know, run your business, but maybe Judaism has some nice ideas for you. Maybe.
I mean, it starts with one of the most famous pieces of Jewish ethics: save one life, you save. the
Oh,
world.
so first of all, there's saving life, but I'm saying so I'm not talking about saving a life. In my personal life, I'm facing a medical dilemma. I've got my doctor. He's a great doctor, great bedside manners, and I respect him and I trust his opinion. So I go to him, I get an opinion. Do we now go and say, okay, very good, you've got an opinion, but now maybe first also consult with what Judaism has to say. Does Judaism have a seat by this table? So I want to explore this with you, and I think this will shock you a little bit. What does medicine have to do with Judaism? And let's begin with our first text today. Text 1. Would you like to read? No? We'll go that way. All right, Jeff, right?
So it's on
Page 8. Well, let's begin with our first text from Maimonides, who was the very first rabbi doctor. Right? Rabbi doctor. Before Rabbi Dr. Twersky. Okay, Rabbi Dr. Maimonides. Let's do it.
It is a positive mitzvah to remove any obstacle that might pose a danger to life, and to be extremely careful regarding these matters, as it is stated. Be cautious and preserve your life, from the Torah.
That's right. Wow. Maimonides is saying, he's using a very strong term over here, positive mitzvah. There's a mitzvah to put on tefillin. There's a mitzvah to keep Shabbos. There's a mitzvah to eat matzah on Passover. There's a mitzvah to be vigilant and careful about your own life. And don't put your life in danger. And from the Torah, be cautious and preserve your life. That's a big thing. Health is Jewish. Much more than that. Health is not just a Jewish value. Health is part of your obligation between you and God. God wants you to do this mitzvah. God wants you to hear the shofar in Rosh Hashanah. And God wants you to take good care of your life. And if you'll say, well, you know what, I'm not in the mood of taking good care of my life. I'll risk my life. Or I'm not going to take good care of myself. I'm not going to brush my teeth. Is that Judaism's business? I'm not going to take good care of my health. I say to somebody, he wants to live in his mom's house, sit in the basement, watch movies the whole day with a bag of potato chips. Say, it's a free country, you can do whatever you want. Judaism's got a problem with you. You're a Jew, we've got an issue. What's the issue? There's a mitzvah to take good care of your health. There's a mitzvah, and you're violating the mitzvah if you put your life in danger. It's actually an interesting question. Heavy sports, what do they call it? Impact sports. Contact sports. Could a Jew do that? Halachically speaking, is it forbidden for a Jew? Could a Jew be a boxer? Could a Jew play real football? Because these things we know can cause real injury. Are you putting your life in danger, which is a violation of this mitzvah? So what we see over here is a very big idea. When we speak about medicine, this is Jewish over here. If Judaism tells you what Shabbos is, when Shabbos is, how to keep Shabbos, what a matzah is, and how to make a matzah, and when to eat a matzah, Judaism also has an opinion, which is not just values. Values sounds like, philosophy, ideas, theories. No, this is real. Okay, but let's keep on going over here. So we have the words of Maimonides. I want to ask you a little question over here. So we have avoid danger. Mitzvah to avoid danger. Mitzvah to take good care of your health. I want you to think. Look at the words of Maimonides. Does this include going to a doctor? We have a mitzvah to take good care of your health. Does that include to go to a doctor? Is going to a doctor part of the mitzvah? What do you say? Craig says no. Why?
That's not what it says. Take care of your own self. Doesn't ask you to go, to meet with someone else to help you.
Oh, so it says try to take good care of your health. But then we, of course, know that you could take very good care of your health, and you could have some sickness, some ailment, some disease. That could happen, even if you try to take good care of yourself. Maimonides doesn't say clearly that part of this is going to a doctor. It just says take as best care of your health as you can. That's the mitzvah. Does anybody...
But being extremely careful about it suggests that going above and beyond necessarily what you can do and finding out, the expertise.
Oh, maybe we should go the extra mile and not just take as best care as we can to avoid danger, but actually pursue medical attention, medical intervention, go see a doctor.
Or even worse now, do we have an obligation, when it becomes available, to do genetic testing?
risk.
Oh, how out of our way do we need to go to
Yes.
seek out dangers which may be there potentially? But by the way, there's this idea, just from the first thing from Maimonides, that it actually is Jewish. You know, is it of religious significance to brush your teeth in the morning? You know, you can make the strong argument, yeah. It's pretty amazing. You wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you are fulfilling a mitzvah. It's a pretty wild thought. Judaism gives you a mandate, take good care of your body. When you are engaged in that pursuit, what are you doing? You're fulfilling the mitzvah. And it's actually an amazing idea. Can you imagine if you think right now, you know, I'm not just going to brush my teeth because whatever. God wants me to do this. It's an amazing concept that you could even have that religious, spiritual moment, even in the... Okay, but let's get back to the point. Going to a doctor. Now, why... If you look at the text of Maimonides does not speak about going to a doctor, which is very interesting because there's a very sound theological argument that in a faith system, going to a doctor is theologically problematic. Maybe it's sacrilegious. Why? If you believe in God, if you believe that God runs the world, and if you believe in God's providence in your life, and all of a sudden you take good care of your health, and all of a sudden you are now suffering from a disease. One day you discover you have a disease. Who did that to you? It's an act of God. Nobody did that to you. That's God. And now you're going to go to a doctor and say, "Doctor, can you undo what God did to me?" That's very problematic.
Not really.
You're saying no. Why not?
Because God created the doctor who
1 second.
has the skills
You're robbing,
and the
you're
knowledge.
robbing the
that-
doctor of the ability to use what God gave
Oh,
him.
so that's an argument that you could say, well, but no, I'll tell you. Now, I'll spoil it for you, as you all know. Judaism believes in doctors. All right, don't worry. I'm not going to argue against your point.
I know.
But let's appreciate the question. All right, I just want to appreciate the question. There are religious groups, there are belief systems that make this argument. You don't go to a doctor. You know, it's actually very interesting. I once read this contrasting how two religious leaders spoke about there was an epidemic ravaging Europe in the early 1600s. So there was a Catholic priest or a clergy member in Amsterdam who wrote critically against his community fleeing the plague. And he says, don't flee the plague, flee sin. And on the contrary, watching death will force you to face your own mortality, and it will inspire you to be more of a penitent, and it brings you closer to God. But he was very critical of people running away from the thing. You're playing God over here. Don't play God. We don't flee the plague. We flee sin. And at the exact same moment, you have the Ramah, Rabbi Moses Isserlich, who is the author of the Shulchan Aruch, who writes categorically, it's a mitzvah for a Jew to avoid the plague. So there you have these two different voices. But there's an argument over here. How could we? How does that make sense? That we're going to step in and God does something in this world and we're going to say, oh, we want to undo what God just did. And we're not going to go to God to solve the problem. We're going to go to a human being to solve the problem. So I understand we want to undo what God did because sicknesses are no good. So let's go make Misha Beirachs and we'll do extra mitzvahs and we'll sing songs. We can do wonderful things to try to avoid the issue. But you're going to go run to a doctor? How is that religious? So we need it's a question. It's a question worth asking, and we need to have an answer to this. The Karaites, who was a sectarian group who broke away from traditional Judaism in Second Temple times, we just learned about them, Craig, and they only believed in the written word of the Torah. They didn't accept any of the traditions of the sages, of the rabbis. There's a verse in the Torah that says, Ani Hashem Rofecha, I am God, your healer. And they said, there you go, that is a source, the biblical source, you're not allowed to go to the doctor, because God's your healer, not Dr. Goldstein. So they forbade going to doctors, together with other Christian groups. I'm just showing you there's a valid theological argument over here that maybe this isn't appropriate. Now, we all know that as Jews, we do go to doctors. How do we know it's okay? Who said doctors are kosher? So here we go. I don't want to keep you in suspense. Yeah.
Maimonides.
First of all, the Maimonides. But let's read right now text 2a on page 9. This is a verse from the Torah in Exodus, the laws between man and man. Go ahead, Max.
If men quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or a fist, and the victim does not die but is confined to bed, if the victim subsequently gets up and walks around outside on his staff, the assailant is cleared. He pays only for the victim's
Okay, so this is the laws. If one man strikes another man, what happens to the offender? So the Torah says, well, let's talk about this. Well, it depends how much damage was caused over here. So we're talking about a case where you've hurt this other person, let's say you broke his leg, but he's not terminal, you didn't kill him, it's all good. So the Torah says, okay, you're off the hook, you didn't kill the man. If you killed him, then you've got real problems over here. But you got to pay up. What do you got to pay up? Number one, involuntary idleness. He can't work for 2 months. You broke his leg, he's a truck driver, he's off the road for 2 months. Who's paying his bills? You got to make sure that he didn't lose any money because of what you did. And you must provide for his cure. What does that mean, provide for his cure? He's going to go to a doctor. He's going to be getting a medical bill. Who's going to be paying for that medical bill? So you got to provide for the bill. You have to make sure that he has the means to get the cure. Oh, comes the Talmud, comes the rabbi, say, look, what does the Bible tell you to do over here? A man is sick. Who do you go to? You go to doctors. And it's part of Jewish law. Jewish law supports that guy goes to the doctor, and you must pay for his doctor bill. What's going on over here? The Talmud says, here we have black on white. The Torah, it's right there, believes in medical intervention. And let's read Max continue. Text 2b from the Talmud, page 10.
The school of Rabbi Yishmael taught he must provide for his cure. This informs us that physicians are granted permission to heal.
There we go. Judaism, the Torah, God gives permission to physicians to be part of intervening in acts of God. And read the next text as well from Rashi on the next page, text 2c.
We do not argue God has struck. Will the physician then go and heal?
There you have it. We don't buy into that argument that God did this is God's business, we don't mix into God's world. Judaism, it's clear that Rabbi Yishmael, the school of Rabbi Yishmael, says it's right there in the Torah. We believe in going to doctors, and doctors are part of God's world. So, now let's put these two together. The Torah mandates us, not as a good suggestion, but as an obligation. You must avoid danger, you must take good care of your life. And the Torah says we believe in going to doctors to make sure you have a good, healthy life. Put the two together. You have the mandate to go to doctors. When you are feeling pain, or if you just need a regular checkup and you go to a doctor, you are following a mitzvah of the Torah. If you are feeling pain, you say, I'm not going to go to doctors. What happens? You're in violation of mitzvah of the Torah. I've seen letters from the Rebbe where there were people who were stubborn. They didn't want to they didn't want to go to doctors for whatever reason. And the Rebbe told them, this is a religious mandate over here. This is the Torah's mitzvah. You can't say no to this. This is not optional. So here we have the idea that seeking out health and going to doctors to get cures when you are sick is a obligation for a Jew, which is heavy stuff over here. You taking your medicine is an obligation for a Jew. It's not a personal decision. It is real.
How about pre-screening before you even get sick? Like there are so many tests.
Oh, so that's another question.
Certain age,
You should know it's maybe even here in the book. There is the idea that it's
Yeah.
there is an idea that a great halachic authority wrote that it's halachically mandated to go get an eye exam, preemptively, meaning to make sure you're healthy. It's part of halacha. So yeah, even if there's no problem, it's part of preserving health. You need to go to the doctor. The doctor says you got to come in for checkups. You can't blow that off. Okay, but let's go back to the question. Why not? So we know the Torah is pro-doctors and doesn't buy into that argument. God did it. It's God's business. But why not? How do we actually answer that question? So our sages record a fascinating discussion, conversation in the Midrash. And it's a great Midrash. I love this Midrash. Let's read text 3, Carrie, on page 15, and here we're going to have our answer.
When Rabbi Ishmael and Akiva and one other individual strolled the streets of Jerusalem, they met an ill man. Rabbis, he asked them, tell me how I might be cured. Do such and such until you are cured, they replied. Who afflicted me, he pressed. God, they responded. You have interfered in an area beyond your jurisdiction, the invalid retorted. God afflicted me, and you advise me how to be cured. Are you not defying God's will? What is your occupation? The rabbis questioned him. I'm a farmer, he replied. This is my scythe in my hand. They pressed further. Who created the vineyard? God, came the reply. You interfere in an area beyond your jurisdiction, they countered. God created it, and you are cutting its fruits. Do you not see the scythe in my hand? Egypt rejoined. If I did not plow, trim, fertilize, or weed, nothing would grow. Foolish man, returned the rabbis. Have you never heard the verse? As for the human, their days are like grass. Just as a tree will not sprout without the farmer weeding, fertilizing, and plowing, and after sprouting it will not live without water and fertilizer, but will die. The same is true of the human body. The drugs and medication are its fertilizer, and the doctor is the farmer.
So, unbelievable statement over here. But I also love how the rabbis, this is good debate over here, they have the gotcha moment, right? So what do you do for a living? Oh, hey, you're accusing us. What about you? And it's just showing the argument over here that we as humans in general understand everything needs human intervention. Everything needs human intervention. The house we live in is human intervention on God's world. The food we eat is human intervention. Someone had to take stuff that grow from the ground and take kernels of wheat and grind it into a bread. You're meddling in God's world. But that's how it works. The very first thing that God told Adam and Eve after they were created in the 6 days of creation is that they're going to be partners in creation. We say this every single Friday night as part of the prayer. Our job is to be an active partner with God in the development of the world. God gives us resources, we manipulate them, we develop them to be of benefit to mankind. We make the world better because of this. And they say the same way a farmer is allowed to go and start manipulating a field in order to grow food, that is how Judaism looks at doctors. And just, this is a crazy line to me. Drugs and medication are the fertilizer of the human being, the doctor is the farmer of the human. That's a pretty interesting analogy over there that our sages are using over here. So Judaism is all in that going to a doctor is religious, it's a mandate, and this is part of God's world. Maimonides takes this even like a step further over here. Let's read text 4, another, just a beautiful text over here. Well, Craig, go ahead and read.
If a person is hungry and eats food in order to relieve themselves from that great discomfort, would anyone suggest that they have abandoned their trust in God? Only fools would posit such a thing. Rather, just as I thank God when I eat for providing me with something edible that removes my hunger and provides me with life and sustenance, it is similarly appropriate to thank Him for creating the treatment I can use to heal my illness.
Thank God. This is part of God's gifts. God gives doctors, and God gives doctors the wisdom and the tools to be able to heal you. Thank God for the doctors. This is not going against God, the very opposite. So here we have the basic understanding of how Judaism sees health, medicine, pursuing health, looking for cures, and the Torah sees it as an obligation. The Torah commands us to avoid danger, to seek healing, and to maintain our health, and this is our responsibility as being partners with God in creation. Now here's the big clincher I want you to realize. It is an obligation. That's the key word over here. Most people think, in the Western world, we look at medicine as a right. Right? Healthcare is a right. And just to use a catchphrase, although I don't want to, I'll use it for what it's worth, but I don't want to go there yet. My body, my choice. I can do whatever I want. If I want, I can take medicine. Don't worry, we're going to talk about abortion in lesson 3. Can't show all my cards on day 1, right? but is that a Jewish attitude? It's my body. I can do whatever I want with it. Judaism says no. It's not. Health is not a privilege. It's not a right. It is a responsibility that God gave you. God gave you your life. God gave you your body. You have a responsibility towards your body. We're going to come back to this point in every single class. What to do, Judaism doesn't give suggestions. What should you do in health? Judaism has a good ethical code. Let's look to Judaism for nice ideas. Judaism gives rulings on medicine. Why? Because this is God's business just as much as Shabbos is, just as much as a pair of tefillin is. God gave you this body. We have a responsibility, a mitzvah, to take good care of this body. The Torah has to give us the exact parameters, the exact laws, what to do, what not to do. But if Torah says do something, that's not a nice idea, it's not a suggestion, it's not giving you the right to, it's giving you an obligation. And if Torah says you're not supposed to do this, it's not an ethical thing. This is law. It's Jewish law. A Jew is not allowed to do this. Here it is explicitly. Let's read text 5. And you know what? I want you to read this as well, Craig. Just we have a lot of text over here, so we'll stack them up a little bit. Page 18, text 5. It's a crazy thing. I have my body, I have my life, and I tell somebody, please hit me. Or please do this to me. Please damage my body somehow. I want it. I like it. Right, it's a good example. You know, it's everybody understands. You go into the boxing ring, you know, we agreed to do it. We shook hands on this. And Judaism says, what? Who gave you the right to tell somebody else to hit you? It's not your body, it's God's body. So this changes the whole way we look at the question of medical ethics. We're not looking at Judaism to give us ethical inspirations. This is a serious question. How does God want me to take care of the life he gave me? How does God want me to take good care of the body he gave me? This is between me and God. This is big business over here. So as we're going to see, this is highly, use the word, of religious significance, of Jewish, a Jew's medical health is just as relevant to a rabbi, to getting a ruling from a rabbi in cases of question, cases of doubt, cases of life and death, as much as a question of about Passover. This is real Jewish business over here. So as we're going to see, Judaism takes medicine very seriously because of all this that we saw. With this, let's get back to our topic. And now we could get back to our topic over here. And now we start having a little bit of the tools to address our question at hand about experimental drugs. We have two values, or two obligations in the mitzvah of healing. Number one, avoid danger. Live a good, healthy life. You're not allowed to put your life in danger. Number two, pursue cures. Generally speaking, these 2 points work hand in hand, right? Generally speaking, these are two sides of one coin. Stay healthy, avoid dangers, go get medicine, go seek medical intervention whenever necessary. It's all part of the same storyline, right? But what do you do if these 2 points of law come in conflict? Which is what happens in this case of experimental treatments. These two don't equal each other. Usually they work hand in hand. But let's think about an experimental treatment. I am facing, or I know somebody facing, Rada, this family, let's say they're Jewish, and they're looking to the Torah for guidance what to do over here. They have a daughter who's terminally ill. She's going to die within a few years. We could give her a drug. Going to get her a drug is fulfilling the mitzvah of pursuing a cure. That's a good thing, right? That's a plus. You know what the only problem is? That potential cure is very dangerous. Potentially dangerous. Am I violating the danger? This Rado could maybe live till 5. Maybe she'll die by 3 because of this drug. Who knows? We know for sure that there's a lot of dangers involved.
Every drug has side effects.
Every drug has. So when you know what the side effects are, at least you can know what they are. But what happens when you make something, it's cutting edge, and no one even knows what's going to happen over here? We may be killing everybody. We don't know.
And we don't even know if it's cutting edge.
We don't know. We don't know if it's going to be effective. We know nothing. It could be the best thing since sliced bread. It could be a way to murder somebody within a week. Who knows?
There are so many people right now who will tell you outside of not necessarily a pharmaceutical company, but even I think it drips into even that world sometimes. You know, the potential cures that are ridiculous or not likely to succeed, or you know, alternative medicine they sometimes call it, that are, you know, complete bunk. And you know,
So if
there's
it's
people who will tell you that since I'm drinking coffee, that coffee enemas will cure stomach problems, and they don't. But
knows?
you know, I mean,
But at least the cough is not killing you. At least hopefully not, right?
There was a phase 1 trial with this drug. So
Oh,
there's some data.
phase 1 trial tells you, but phase 1 trial, I looked it up. Phase 1 trial does not yet determine that it is healthy. It tells you that it's not going to kill the guy within 2 weeks. Meaning,
Look at the outcomes of the people.
Safety.
the baseline of safety. Phase 2 is really where we're going to start getting a better idea of risk versus reward management, what the percentages are. But I was thinking that also. Maybe after phase 1, we know for a fact no one's going to get hurt over here. It's not the case. Phase 1 is only like just basically, is this going to kill somebody overnight? You know? That's phase 1 kind of. Here we have this. So which one do we prioritize? Do we say pursue a cure, even if potentially it could be putting your body in danger? Or do we say no, what's prime is avoiding danger? If you could avoid danger and get cures, wonderful. Gesundheit, do it. But if pursuing a cure could compromise your life, no. This is the main thing. So which one is it? And this is the question which sits at the question of experimental treatments. Now, in Western society, their strong argument is, whenever you're looking at terminal illness, is that the patient has the right to choose and make a certain decision. And what a patient can sometimes say, an attitude is, look, I've anyways only got a week to live. I've only got a year to live. I've only got 2 years to live. Okay, that's life. But I'm dying anyways. I'm willing to take the gamble. What do I gotta lose? I'm dying anyways. So I'm gonna die in a year from now. But I'm getting the potential to live for another 50 years now. So in Western medicine, and let's say Radha's parents can maybe think this way, right? That there's nothing to lose if treatment fails. This child is gonna die soon. Every single day she's getting weaker and sicker as this disease takes hold of her more. And the patient's lifespan is already limited, so there's nothing to lose. So if she dies now, it's tragic, but yeah, come on, she was already on the way to death. And if it works, look at that. That's a good thing. So this is not such a ethically challenging question from the Western attitude. Because at some point you could say, we're running out of life anyways, let's just go ahead and do this. We've got nothing to lose anyways. But the Jewish perspective, the stakes are so much higher. The Jewish value is there is something to lose if the treatment fails. Why? Since every moment of life is precious. Try arguing to Judaism. Well, come on, the guy only has a week to live, so what's the difference? He'll live for a week or he'll die today. That is a totally moot point from Judaism's perspective.
But I think that's worded wrongly. I'm going to play lawyer for a moment.
Sure, go ahead.
But it's not
For a quick minute.
If the treatment fails, it's not. There's still
They're no
nothing to
worse
lose.
off than they were to start.
No, I mean fails as in it leads to death.
Right. If the treatment catastrophic.
If it's catastrophically failed, there you go, very good.
Something like that.
Yes, yeah, no, if it's a fail that just it didn't work, right, then no lose,
If it's the sugar-
no win, no lose, we're back to square one.
If it's the sugar pill, no problem.
Oh, but if it's very good, if it's a catastrophic failure, a family could say, we're willing to do this. We're willing to do this because our relative's gonna die anyways. And yes, this may kill them sooner, but it's a gamble we're willing to take. But from a Jewish perspective, even one moment of life, we consider as if it's a whole long life. And you can't bring this argument from a Jewish ethical perspective. Oh, come on, it's worth it because the guy's dying anyways. No. In Judaism, we preserve life even if there's only one more minute to live. In Judaism, we do intervention, and this is going to become the tension of next week's class, to prolong life even only for 10 more minutes. Somebody's going to die anyways, and that could give them a little bit to give them longer life. Is it worth it? You say, oh, come on, the guy's dying today. 10 minutes more, 10 minutes less. Who are you doing a favor for exactly? And Judaism will say, what do you mean? You can't count, you can't put a price tag on life. You can't give a value tag to life. Every moment of life is of infinite value. So in Judaism, this whole idea of we could do the risk because life is ending anyways is a moot point, which makes this, and I'll get to your question in a second, a highly high-stake ethical dilemma. We could either pursue a cure, which will give us the prize, long life. The cure for the disease, we got long life ahead of us. That is so precious to Judaism. Judaism would jump at the opportunity for that. On the other hand, we're putting this person at risk of cutting short life. That's the worst thing in Judaism. And I don't care if you're cutting it short by even only 10 minutes. That doesn't make it any better from a Jewish perspective. So this is a high-stake question, no matter which way we go. One second, I want to go ahead, Richard.
So those are great questions, a lot of unknowns.
Mm-hmm.
What about in situations where there are knowns that are very complex, like the treatment will cause immense pain and suffering for the entire period of the treatment, which could be 6 months, and the treatment may or may not be effective.
Oh, so
Now what?
Okay, so here is you're asking a very good question, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to start with the case study is because no two cases are going to be alike. First of all, terminal illness. How long is terminal illness? How much pain are we in? What's the quality of life? And then the what do we know about this treatment? Every single treatment is different. What are the it's so case by case. So we're going to have to speak about generalities. And what we're going to see is, and I'll just give you another spoiler alert, this class is going to give us a framework of an understanding of how Judaism approaches this. We're not going to come to a final conclusion. If there's ever a practical question, you're going to have to speak about with a competent halachic rabbi, halachic authority, who can actually hold your hand, understand the case, speak to your doctor, speak to his professionals, and help you come to a ruling of what to do. But I'm going to fill you in on what a rabbi will not tell you. When you call up a rabbi, he's going to give you a verdict. He's not going to give you the behind the scenes, how did we get there? And what are the considerations? And what's the framework, the value system, the principles that we're going to be working with? That's what I'm going to be filling you in with. But we're not going to go and give a final thing just because it's just like in medicine. You can't say what should be done. You got to speak to the doctor. Doctors check you out, and it's always going to be case by case. Yes.
It's kind of similar to the last question, but I'll go back to my own life. 8 years ago, my father had a situation where he had a surgery for a cancer, and the likelihood was that the surgery was like, let's say 90% like it's not experimental. Shorten his life by say 2 or 3 years.
Right.
I mean, doesn't that raise the exact same ethical dilemma?
Right, right. It's very similar, right? Exactly. It's the same general principle.
You hinted there, let's say we're looking at preserving life.
An example of where every single case comes with its own mixed bag, and every single case has to be looked at for the specifics and how to. And as we're going to see, it's not one clear-cut answer. And it's one of the things we're going to see in this course. People think, give me the Twitter version. What does Judaism say about abortion? And I'm like, no. That's not how this works. These are, first of all, this is such a real life. This is such sensitive, and no two cases are alike. The worst thing is to be flippant about it and make it as if it's just like a bumper sticker. Judaism believes. This is real life. There are people who are hurting, dealing with serious life and death questions, and we need to give it the proper nuance and sensitivity and complexity that it deserves. So as we're going to see, all these, there's an hour and a half class minimum for all these questions for a reason. These are, we're going to give the proper treatment. Talk about an hour and a half class. We got to get moving if we're gonna get out of here before midnight. Okay, so don't worry. Now, in order to understand how to navigate this tension, and we're going to start doing some real Jewish learning from the halachic authorities throughout the ages, let's get some lexicon, some terms on the table. These are the words that Judaism uses, that Jewish halachic literature uses, to discuss the two sides of the coin. And I want you to remember these because we're going to be using these. I want to teach you. I want to give you lexicon, which will make you into better Jewish scholars. All right. So if you know these terms, you're going to be able to navigate a lot of halachic Torah literature a lot more. Chaye olam and chaye shah. Chaye olam literally means a life. Chaye means life, and what does olam mean? World or eternal. Eternal life. Eternal life. Now, of course, nobody lives eternally, but eternal life basically means healthy life, where you're looking at life, right? Open throttle. Open season. You got a long life ahead of you. No one's looking at an end date. That's Chaye Olam. Then there's something called Chaye Shah. Chaye means life, and Shah means of an hour, temporary, short-term life. And that's the tension. When we are dealing with somebody who's facing a terminal illness, we know for sure they could be alive. The medical consensus is they're going to be alive for another, let's say, week, 2 years, 5, whatever it is, right? That is called Chaye Shah. We know this person has this amount of time to live according to medical consensus. Which means this is the life we're looking at right now. The definite short-term life that they have. It is short-term, but that's what we're looking at right now. That's what we got on the table. In the case of our case study, Rada, she's 3 years old now. Her Chaye Shah, she has a terminal illness, so she does not have Chaye Olam. We're not looking at the prospect of a long life, which will end at 120, God willing. We're looking at a short-term life, so she doesn't have Chaye Olam. She has Chaye Shah. Her short-term life is about 2 years. Best case scenario, up to 7 more years. And then there's Chaye Olam, the potential life this person could have if we could cure them. Which one do we prioritize? When Judaism says we value human life and we want to prolong human life, and health and medicine is real to Judaism, it's a mandate, it's an obligation. Which one takes a priority? Do we say the Chaye Shah, the definite life, the certain life we have ahead of us, 2 years, 3 months, whatever it is, but we have that. Do we say this is king? Don't mess with this life. And therefore, we will compromise treatments which could give us the potential for long-term life. So do we prioritize Chaye Shah, or do we say no? What we're looking at, let's keep our eyes on the money. Judaism wants Chaye Olam. We want to give somebody long, eternal life. That's where the money is. And we're willing to compromise Chaye Shah for the hope of Chaye Olam. In the pursuit of Chaye Olam, we can maybe do a treatment which may cut down this life. But let's hope we can get this. High risk, high reward. Which one is king in Judaism? Which one takes priority? So that is the big question over here. If we prioritize, right, is there a way to choose which obligation to focus on? If we prioritize Chaye Shah, if we prioritize the life of here and now, then what we would come to is don't do any risk. Why? Because the Rada has 2 more years to live right now. You give her treatment, she could die in 2 months. Don't touch Chaye Shah. You're going to miss out on the potential for Chaye Olam, but this is supreme. This is a definite short-term life. Don't mess with that. Or do we say, no, we want Chaye Olam, give the cure. Let's look for the cure. It may compromise this, but our priority is this. Which one is a priority in Judaism? This is the tension here. Which one wins? Chaye Olam or Chaye Shah? And we have to use this paradigm. This is what we're going to be using. We're going to be using these terms to play around with this question. You ready? Are we good? Whew. Okay. Let us begin. One of the most amazing parts of the Jewish library is called halachic responsa. Rabbis, you see, you have codes of Jewish law, which just literally tell you the law. Very clear cut, very direct. Then you have books of rabbis throughout the ages, in the past 2,000 years, who were halachic authorities, and they've dealt with real life situations during their lifetimes. And they've showed us, and they wrote down these answers, responsa, how they applied our tradition and came to real life answers in their cases. And a lot of this course is going to be built around the fascinating world of these halachic responsa, different rabbis in every single locality dealing with the issues that they're facing. Let us read. Let us begin our journey by looking at the writings of a great rabbi. He was a rabbi all throughout Europe in the 17th, 18th century. His name was Rabbi Yaakov Reischer, one of the most important voices of the halachic development. He's living right at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, just the beginning of new medical advancements. And he's maybe the first one to start to touch upon a lot of new world ideas. And he's sometimes the very first line of action in the world of Jewish law. Let us read the question that comes to Rabbi Yaakov Reischer, Elki, text 7a.
7A?
7a, page 21.
I received an inquiry submitted by an expert doctor regarding a terminally ill patient. The anonymous medical prognosis is that the patient will die within the next couple of days. However, the physicians suggest that there is a medicine that might cure him, but might cause him to die within a couple of hours of taking it. Is it permitted to administer the medicine? My response is that this is a matter of life and death, which therefore requires exceptionally careful consideration. It is necessary to thoroughly review the relevant passage in the Talmudic and Halachic codes, for one who kills a single individual is considered as having destroyed the entire world, and conversely, the act of saving a single individual is considered as having sustained an entire world.
Oh,
No pressure.
no pressure here. You could kind of feel in his writing how Rabbi Yaakov Reischer is breaking a sweat over here, huh? This is high stakes over here. The guy's dying in a week. First of all, he's got no time. He's got no extra time to think. The guy has 7 days to live. The doctor's like, listen, I got this crazy heavy drug. I could give it to him. If it works, this guy's looking at Chaye Olam. He's going to live. I'm saying, that's it. He got his life back. But if I give it to him and it doesn't work, he's dead tonight. Funeral tomorrow. Who can make such a call? And the scary thing is, we're killing a man. He's going to die in 7 days. But again, Judaism doesn't believe in that whole logic. We're killing his life. What do we do? Rabbi Yaakov Reisher doesn't just give us his final word. He wrote down for us his mental process. What's his journey? And he begins with his initial suggestion. And Elke, I want to read this too. Text 7b on page 22.
Apparently it would seem appropriate to apply the principle of chef real casse. It is preferred to let the situation sit where it is and make no proactive move. Out of concern for the preservation of Chayesha, this consideration applies even in the case of Gosses, a dying patient in the final throes of life.
See, he says this is such an impossible dilemma. How could you choose one over the other? It's so risky. He says, and there's a halachic principle, shev al taseh. Sometimes when no course of action is desirable, there's no good ideas out of this. Sometimes Jewish law will just simply say, you know what? Leave it as it is. Sit and do nothing. Let fate run its course. Sometimes it's the safest. If you intervene, then you're always doubting yourself. So just, you know what? It is what it is. We don't have any good way out of this. His initial thought is, let's maybe just leave it. It's too risky, whichever way we go. He just doesn't find a precedence at the beginning of which one to choose. Do we jeopardize Chaye Shah for the hope for Chaye Olam? How does it go? Or do we say, no, we got to preserve life. We got to preserve, even if it's only Chaye Shah, even if it's only the short-term life. But then Rabbi Reisher says, you know what, actually? He found a piece from the Talmud that he says, I think does speak to our issue here. It's not speaking about experimental treatments, which is what he's dealing with. It's still about a whole different case, but he says, I think I could connect the dots from this other story in the Talmud, this other ruling in the Talmud, and bring it back here. Fascinating discussion in the Talmud of, are you allowed to go to a doctor if he is an anti-Semite? He's pro-Hamas. And you got to go to the doctor. The only problem is, who wants to sit down on the table with an anti-Semite doctor holding a knife to you? It's not exactly what you want. And there's a real concern. Now, by the way, it's not just theory. One of the times, pretty recently, where Jews have faced this was right after the Holocaust. What did they do with the survivors? They were put in DP camps and displaced persons camps. Many of them were placed in Germany. One of the biggest displaced persons camps for survivors was in Pucking, Germany. So you have Jews who are, of course, not at all in good medical condition. They need a lot of medical intervention. And who's running the hospitals? Who's the nurses? Who are the doctors? Just yesterday, they were faithful to the Nazis. And now you're going to go to them to give you healing? And you're going to trust them to not kill you today? And say, oh, something went wrong in the hospital. I'm saying it's the easiest way out for an anti-Semite. So, halacha, there's a discussion. Is a Jew allowed to go when there's no other choice? It's not like over here, you got every block there's another doctor you could go to. You got no choice. Only one doctor in town, but he's an anti-Semite. Is a Jew allowed to put his life potentially in danger for that? So Rabbi Yaakov Reisher takes us to this Talmud in Tractate Avodah Zarah. And Debbie, give us a read text 8a on page 23.
Rabbi Yochanan stated, when it is doubtful whether an invalid will live or die, and the only physician available is a heathen whose animosity toward Jews leads us to suspect that he might deliberately kill a patient, we do not approach that physician for treatment. However, if we are certain that without treatment the patient will die, we may approach that physician for treatment. The Talmud asks, are we not placing the patient's Chaye Shah in potential jeopardy? The Talmud responds, in such a case, the concern for Chaye Shah can be disregarded.
Ooh, here we have a big statement from the Talmud. If it's a maybe, a patient is very ill, but it's not certain he's going to die. But he needs a doctor, but he's not certainly going to die. And the doctor is an anti-Semite, and there's always that maybe hanging in the room. Is this doctor going to look for an opportunity to kill the patient? In the case of maybe he's going to die, is he allowed to go to the doctor? What did the Talmud say? No. Stay out of the doctor's sight, because you're not for sure going to die. But if the patient will surely die if untreated, then the Talmud says, okay, you're for sure going to die. The answer is yes. Why? The Talmud clearly asks, are we not jeopardizing, potentially, the Chaye Shah of this person? He's surely going to die, but die in a week. You put him on the anti-Semite, he'll die tonight. So are we not putting him in jeopardy? And the Talmud clearly rules, in such a case, meaning in a case where there's certain death, it's a terminal condition, we disregard Chayesha. There we got a ruling. If it's terminal, we are willing to take risks for the hope of Chaye Olam, for the long-term life. Hopefully we'll be able to get a healing. Okay, but the drama continues. This is the Talmud, but the Talmud, of course, is an ongoing narrative, and the Talmud gives us a ruling, but the Talmud right away gives pushback. And Debbie, you want to continue? Text the next text, text AB, to page 24.
On what grounds are we permitted to waive the concern for Chayesha?
Well, Thomas says, 1 second, what type of flippant statement is that? Yeah, you're allowed to compromise Chaye Sha'a if the person's terminally ill. Who said that? Where did you get that from, the Talmud asks? That's a massive statement to make. You are willing to put a person's life, he'll naturally die within a week, and you're saying we'll do something that he may die today. Where'd you get that from? Talmud asks that question. And the Talmud then says, and I want to follow what's going on over here, we got Rabbi Yaakov Reisher, who quotes the Talmud, and that Talmud saying, quoting the Torah, quoting the Bible. The Talmud says, we're getting this rule from a story in the book of Kings, Kings 2. Without getting too much into the history, this is the ancient land of Israel. The land of Israel, for most of the Jews' original history in the land of Israel, the Jewish people were divided into 2 kingdoms. There was a northern kingdom, which is called the Kingdom of Israel, the 10 tribes, which became lost, 10 lost tribes. And then there is the southern kingdom, which is called the Kingdom of Judah. Kingdom of Judah in the south. Their capital is Jerusalem. Northern kingdom, their capital is Samaria, Shomron. The book of Kings tells us a story of how the neighboring nation, the Arameans, laid siege, which is modern-day Syria, lays siege to the capital city of Samaria, and a horrible famine ensues. The Torah even tells us that there's reports of cannibalism coming out of the city. Horrible, horrible stuff. And we got this showdown between the Jewish northern kingdom, holed up in their capital, fortified city of Samaria, and the Aramean enemies waiting to attack. Okay. Part of this big, large drama, we have a very interesting case of 4 individuals, 4 men. They all are suffering from a skin disease, which doesn't exist anymore today, called sarat, which is, the Bible speaks about saras. And what the Torah says to do when a man or a woman is suffering from saras, they need to go into quarantine. There you go. They need to be quarantined. So they're kicked out of the city, these 4 people, until they get healthy again. So these 4 individuals are stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? They're kicked out of the city. They're not in the city. And the other direction, there's the enemy. They're sandwiched between them. And they're also starving. They got no food. You know, the West Bank doesn't, it's not like a very plentiful area. You could eat rocks for dinner, nothing more. What are you supposed to do? And the Torah goes into the private life of these 4 individuals suffering from skin disease, kicked out of the city, and now they are facing imminent death due to starvation. And the Torah reports their great idea. Text 9, Stuart, page 28 from the Book of Kings.
4 men stricken with zarat lingered outside the city gates. They told each other, "Why should we sit here until we die of starvation? If we decide to enter the city, we will die there due to the famine in the city. If we stay here, we will also die. So now, let us go and defect to the Aramean camp. If they spare us, we will be provided food and remain alive. If they kill us, we are going to die anyway."
Oh, they made an interesting. These 4 men came to an interesting decision. We are facing imminent death. Our only option of a cure, let's use the word cure. Their cure is just food. Our only option for a cure is to go and defect to the enemies. We'll go and we'll come with a big white flag. Worst case scenario, they behead us on the spot because we're the enemy. If they behead us on the spot, we have just compromised our chaye shah, our short-term life. Starvation, we would die in 4 days. Now we're going to die in an hour. But if it works, we get Chayei Olam. We got our whole life back. What do? They decided, what do we got to lose? We're dying anyways, right? And they go ahead and they go to the enemy. And then the Torah gives a fascinating story. They come to the enemy tents and they're waiting for the shots. They're waiting for the drama, for the showdown. Nothing happens. They discover that the enemy camp is totally empty. So they right away go and fill up their bellies. And then they're like, hey, we got to let all the Jews know, hold up in Samaria, that there's no enemy over here. There's just an empty camp. And the miracle basically was that God did a miracle. The enemy heard the roaring sound of the coming enemy army coming for an attack. They fled, ran back to Aram, to modern-day Syria, but no Jews were coming. There was no army. There was no attack. It was just a miracle, and the Jews were able to right away replenish, and they were all able to eat from the enemy's food. Wonderful story. Comes the Talmud and says, 1 second. The Torah tells us the story. If the Torah tells us the story, there's a lot of significance there. And the Torah seems to be in support of these 4 men, to their decision that they came to, because the Torah tells the story. The Torah is not critical of them, and they were the ones who actually brought about, they were the ones who had the merit to bring the deliverance, to bring the good news of the miracle to the Jewish people. What was their thought process? We are willing to compromise the short-term life facing a terminal illness for the potential hope of a cure which will restore long-term life. There we have it. It's in the Bible. We are willing to make that gamble, and the Torah gives us the permission to do that. Rabbi Yaakov Reisher introduces us to this whole line of thinking from the Talmud and gives us his ruling in this case. And I want you to read this as well, Stuart. Text 10 concluding Rabbi Yaakov Reisher's responsa, page 29.
If the possibility exists for this treatment to completely cure the patient from his illness, we can certainly disregard the concern for Chayei Shah. This approach has clear precedence in the aforementioned Talmudic case. Consequently, in our case, since the patient will certainly die without intervention, we ignore the certainty that he will survive on his own for a few more days and seize the chance of fully healing him. The above decision notwithstanding, a physician must not take this decision lightly. It is necessary for the physician to weigh the situation carefully, to consult with the other expert physicians in that city, and in case of divergent views, to abide by the consensus of the majority of experts and to procure the agreement of the local halachic authority.
So he gives his permission to go and do this risky move. This is the final assessment of Rabbi Reisher. He rejects his initial suggestion to do nothing, and his final ruling is that short-term life can be risked. We're willing to play around with short-term life if failure to act will result in the loss of the potential long-term life. So it's a terminal illness, and if we don't do anything, they're going to die soonish. There's a temporary short-term life. We are willing to put that short-term life on the line for the hope that we could get to a long-term life. Okay. He concludes here with critical words, which is really how Judaism till today approaches medical ethic questions. We cannot take this decision lightly. The physician must weigh the situation carefully. The physician must consult with other physicians. We need to come to a consensus if there's a disagreement with physicians. And Judaism is a very big believer in medical consensus. What is the majority opinion? In general, Judaism takes doctors more serious than doctors take themselves. A doctor has an opinion. Judaism says what a doctor says is of religious significance. We're going to rule a Torah ruling based on what the doctor says. So this is a very big idea. And then you need to go to the local halachic authority and make sure the rabbi can now, with the facts on the table, could help give you the proper course of action. This is how we do it. Now, we have a ruling. We finally come to a thing. We are willing to compromise Chayei Shah, and we want our eyes on the money, Chayei Olam. We are looking to get the healing, even if, God forbid, we do something and we're going to cut short this life. But it's worth the risk. The Torah gives permission to do that. Yes?
So I want to make sure I understand. You need 5 doctors, but only 1 rabbi.
You don't need 5 doctors.
Well, I'm saying you need multiple opinions.
In a complex situation, a rabbi will probably also.
Well, it's not just one authority. Is it a group of authorities?
You're not going to go to a court, but very often a rabbi. I'll put it this way: there are very few rabbis, especially the more complex situation gets, A rabbi who's actually really well-versed in a medical condition is rare. For example, I'm a rabbi, but don't come to me for a medical ethical decision. I'm not qualified for that. You got to go to a real professional. There are many rabbis who will say, you can't speak to me, you got to go to this person, like a specialty rabbi in the field. But even, the point is, it has to be taken seriously. There's no giving flippant answers. This is life and death, this is very, very serious. But I don't know if the number is exact and, we're easier.
Making it up, and it seems like you only need one halachic.
In general, every person needs to have their own halachic rabbi, which is one. Who's the rabbi who helps you whenever you are in doubt and you wonder, what does the Torah want me to do over here?
Do you think that they're going to come to the same, it's 2 doctors, 3 opinions. So it's the same thing with the halachic rabbi? Depending on which rabbi you seek, they might give you
That is possible.
a different opinion?
Yeah, and we'll actually see that in a moment. I'll get to that in a moment. Okay, we have 8 minutes left. We're going to go overtime, so if you want to bail out, you can do that now. No, we're not going to go too much overtime, but we gotta get this down over here. All right. We now at least have the basic framework we are working with. We are willing to compromise short-term life, and we're willing to take risks. Are we good to go? What do you say? Are we done the class? Or do we still have some loose ends we got to tie up?
Measuring quality of life, things like that.
Oh, so there's other factors, but let's not even go to other factors. We need to understand more precisely. We see here that Torah is willing to do something which is radical for the Torah to want to do, to be willing to do. Compromise short-term life. If it's short-term life, we're willing to compromise it for the hope of long-term life. Here's my question for you. What's the cutoff date? We are willing to compromise short-term life because it's only short-term life. Well, what's short-term life? Is that a week? Is that a month? 6 months? A year? At what point would Judaism say, no, we got too much life in your short-term life, and that's too much we're not willing to gamble with? So what is the exact parameter, the exact criteria of Chayei Shah? Somebody's facing a terminal illness. Some people are facing a terminal illness and they could live for another 30 years, but it's a terminal illness. Is that also called Chayei Shah? Because terminal illness. Is Judaism willing to play around and risk and gamble with 30 years temporary life, short-term life? Or only if it's, how long is that? At what point will Judaism say, no, this is not short-term life anymore? And the ticket that we give you, the allowance we give you to risk life, to gamble with life, you can't do it to that long of a life. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, we said we're willing to take risk. And the obvious question is, well, what level of risk? How much risk are we willing to do? How good or bad does the gamble need to be for Judaism to allow it? And at what point will Judaism say, no, we let you take risks, not that risk? So we got to have a better criteria here, which is in general how law works. Laws can't work in generalities. We got to have real specifics. So we're saying, hey, we know the general rule. Judaism allows taking risks and compromise Chayei Shah for the hope of Chayei Olam. But let's now get some more real, hard, cold numbers and criteria on the table. You're with me? In the next few minutes, I want to take a quick, pretty fast-paced tour to see how different groups of rabbis came to these answers in these 2 questions. And what we're going to see, and this may surprise you, is that there's no one halachic consensus. Some rabbis are more liberal, are more forgiving, they're willing to give more allowance. Some rabbis are more conservative and they're very hesitant to let too much. Now, who's right and who's wrong? The answer is nobody's right or wrong. Just like doctors can have different opinions. Who's right and who's wrong? When you go to a doctor, it's not just, ChatGPT and AI can't be a doctor, because so much of what you go to a doctor for is the intuition. They have a lot of wisdom, but how do you apply it? Every single case is different. What are the considerations over here? What's the patient's? There's so many factors that come into play, and at the end of the day, when you go to a rabbi, he's going to be using all the precedents of all the halachic authorities throughout history to come to the best spot on the spectrum. Where do you best fit in? And to give you your tailor-made answer. So what we're going to see is that there is a certain wide spectrum of opinions here amongst the halachic authorities, okay? Let us begin. What is considered Chayei Shah? Short-term life. What makes life short-term? And again, we need to know this because Torah allows us to risk and play around with short-term life. Long-term life is off the table. Don't do anything risky with long-term life. Short-term life is okay. So what's short-term life? And at what point do we say this is not short-term life anymore? we got to look at precedents. Where do we have, what is the precedence that short-term life you're allowed to risk for the hope of a cure? The story of the 4 men starving outside of Samaria, right? That's the precedence. Now, what does that precedence teach us? That is a case where they were allowed to compromise their short-term life in the hope of a cure. What was their condition? A couple of days. So that's one way to look at it. Another one is not about how many days, but a certain death. They were facing certain terminal illness. Their terminal illness was starvation. Right? That's not a maybe you're going to die. You will die. It's not a question of if, it's only a question of when. The first halachic authority we're going to look at, Rabbi Kook from Israel, a great halachic authority, and he's on the more liberal side, and he says, look at the precedents. Terminal illness is what makes chayesha, and he doesn't put any time limitation on that. Let's read text 11. Rich, we're up to you, right? Page 30. From Rabbi Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook. This will be our first halachic ruling over here on this.
The boundary marking the transition from chayesha to chaye olam is not clearly delineated. However, it is logical to assume that as long as we know that illness is already terminal, regardless of how much time will pass until death arrives, it is considered chayesha.
Oh, so Rabbi Kook tells us the only criteria what makes short-term life is if it's a terminal illness. Is this person looking at death in the face? Is death a clear part of this man's life trajectory? If yes, we call that life chayesha, short-term life, even if he can live for another 30 years. He can have a child and marry off the child, and we'll still say today he could play around with that life with the risk of dying today from that cure. Rabbi Kook says, look at the precedents. The case of the 4 men outside of the city of Samaria who are starving are facing certain death, and whenever there's certain death, that's when we are willing to take the risk. That's Rabbi Kook, but he's in the minority. Most rabbinic authorities are like, no. You're just letting this go with no limit. We don't buy into that. They again look at the story and they say what Stuart first said. How long did these people have to live? These starving men outside of Samaria. Days. Short term means short term. So they say not only terminal illness, but they say it needs to be imminent death. Imminent death, we're willing to play around with this life for the hope of cure. But if it's not imminent, I'm sorry, we can't call that short-term life. And that is their rationale. We're not willing to take any risks. Let us read one of the most important voices in this camp of the halachic voice from Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, as well, a very, very important halachic authority. In general, the names here, even if I mention it, don't be overwhelmed by the names, but all the names that we're using in this course are really some of the top pillars in the storyline and the history and the development of Jewish law to the way we apply it till today. So all these names are what we use today in dealing with these questions. So Stuart, read this as well. Richard. Okay, let's move it on. But we got stuff, don't worry, we still got stuff for Shauna. We're not running out for you.
The definition of chayesha is not clearly spelled out in Jewish law. It is clear that a life expectancy of 1 to 2 years cannot be considered chayesha, because if so, what is chaye olam? After all, everyone is mortal, and what difference is there between 1 year, 2 years, or 100 years, seeing that no one lives forever? Are we to categorize all life as chayesha? Nor does it appear correct to say that chayesha only refers to a situation in which the patient will die from the specific illness for which they presently seek a cure, and not from other ailments. What difference should it make what illness will cause the person's death? Rather, it would appear that just as terefa is defined as an ill person or animal that will not live more than 12 months, similarly, anyone whose illness will prevent them from surviving for more than 12 months has entered the category of chayesha. Conversely, if the illness will cause death only after 12 months, the interval is not considered chayesha, but chaye olam.
So he says, number one, we need a real cutoff date, and he uses the precedents. We're looking at imminent death. Even if you have a terminal illness, but if you're living more than a year, okay, then you're part of all of humanity. We're all going to die someday. So then you're still looking at a life ahead of you. We're looking at imminent. What's imminent? So Shlomo Kluger looks at Jewish precedent. In Judaism, there's a term called treif. which is very interesting. Treif does not mean, we use it colloquially to mean non-kosher meat. But literal treif means one thing and one thing only. Let's say a bull comes into a slaughterhouse, and we see that this bull has suffered a traumatic injury. It's got into a fight with another bull, and that bull gored it, and now it has a serious gash in its stomach. Or it got such a bad clop that there's internal bleeding, and that's called treifa. Treifa literally means ripped or mauled. The animal's not healthy. A kosher animal, fully kosher, and you could slaughter it, but if it would die within 12 months of an injury, of a treifa injury, is not kosher. It's considered already on the road to death, because death is imminent. What's considered a treifa? If it's going to die within 12 months. But if an animal has an injury, and it's going to die probably in 18 months, then it's kosher. Because it is an injury, but over 12 months, we don't look at it as imminent death. And then at that point, every cow's going to die. So it's a fully living cow, and that can be a kosher animal. Rabbi Shlomo Kluger uses that, says, look, Judaism's position is that 12 months is a cutoff for imminent versus not imminent. So Rabbi Shlomo Kluger says, Chaye Shah is only when there's a terminal illness that will take out this person in under 12 months. Under 12 months, we could start getting risky. Over 12 months, you lost that window of playing around. This is what he rules. Okay, so now we have a little bit of a variation of positions on what is the exact criteria of Chaye Shah. You could either be very liberal, according to Rabbi Cook, and the only qualification is that there's a terminal illness. And if there's a terminal illness, then yes, you have the allowance, the permission to be as risky as you want to be. Or Rabbi Kluger says, no, not just terminal illness, but you got to be looking at imminent death in under 12 months. Okay, now let's go to the next question. How much risk are we willing to take? What level of risk? Every single time there's a risk, we want to know, well, what are the chances? What are the chances of risk versus the chance of reward? Is it a safe risk? Is it 50-50 where, okay, it's equal chances? Is it 30-70 where there's at least a good chance, somewhat of a good chance, that this will work, but there's also a pretty high chance it won't work? Is it 10-90 where there's really low chance of this working, but maybe it's going to work? Will Judaism even say we'll take a 99% chance, where 99% chance it won't work, but 1% chance it will work? And not working doesn't mean no harm done. Not working means the guy's dying tonight. So high stakes over here. How much risk are we willing to do? Some halakha authorities are really scared of letting you do too much risk. They say, this is Judaism so going out of its comfort zone. We're willing to let you play around with your life. Like, that's unheard of. Now you want us to take high risks? No. So some are really scared to really give strong allowance in the risk zone. Let's read one position on this. They will not sanction a procedure that has less of a 50% chance of success. This is the more conservative position. I need 50% chance of success or more. Anything under, you're not getting permission from this halakhic authority. So Sean, you want to read this as well? Text 13. This is Rabbi Eliezer Yehuda Waldenberg, who's actually very contemporary.
However, this permission to operate is valid only if the chances of life and death as a result of the surgery are equal, but not if, in the majority of cases, the patient will die as a result of the operation.
Oh, Rabbi Waldenberg comes and says, I need a 50% chance of something going wrong or less. If it's more than 50% chance that something will go wrong in this procedure, in this medical treatment, I'm out. The Torah is not going to let you do that level of risk. Okay, but other halakhic authorities are willing to give you a lot more allowance. Let's read from Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grodzinski, who was the most important halakhic authority in Lithuania before the Holocaust. He's a very important voice as well, and he doesn't agree with Rabbi Waldenberg. Text 14, you don't want to read? All right, let's bring it back here. Jeff, text 14, page 34.
When faced with a case in which there is no alternative hope for a patient's survival, we disregard our concern for Chaye Shah in exchange for even a remote possibility that the patient will be healed.
Okay. He said, Rabbi Grodzinski says, 1 second, the guy is terminally ill. we're willing to take all the risks. And Rabbi Grzinski is very liberal, and he says, I'm willing to go for any risk, even if there's only remote possibility. Now again over here, what's remote? Is it 199? Is it 1090? Is it 2080? You know, then it's hard to know. And it's kind of case by case. A rabbi is going to have to use his wisdom and intuition in any given situation to help a Jew come to the right answer in their specific case. Okay, one final point. There's another consideration over here. This is when we know for a fact either a procedure or a drug, which is risky, and we know what numbers we're dealing with. Is it 50%? Is it 40%? Is it 2%? We know because it's precedent. What about getting back to our topic at hand, experimental treatment? We got no clue. What then? Now the risks are out of sight. Now we can't even put a number to it, a figure to it. That makes it even more precarious. It could be 100% success. It could be 0% success and totally fatal. What do we do then? So some authorities tell us that taking risks is only if it's a proven cure. Which means Rabbi Grzinski would say, I'm willing to take any risk, but only if it's a risk for something we know works.
There's no risk.
No. There is a risk, but we know that the cure is potentially there. We don't know if it's going to work, but we know it does work 10% of the time. You understand? The problem is Rabbi Grzinski, according to this authority, who says only proven cures, will say, but experimental treatments, we got no data on that. You can't do that. Other opinions, and by the way, again, we have precedence for this. In the story of the 4 men who are starving outside of Samaria, they're willing to risk their lives to look for the cure. What's their cure? Food. Is food a certain cure? Yes. The cure for hunger is food.
But here's the question.
Yeah.
It said that there was, even outside of the city, there had been a famine going on.
Oh, yes.
And how were they guaranteed they were going to find that food?
The army they knew had food. They're able to see. They see. They're having barbecues every night.
So the army left.
No. But they left 10 minutes before they got there. It was a miracle. The Arameans had food. They were there. They were totally dug in to be there for as long as they needed to be there.
Okay, because
So
it said that there was very little food outside of the
that's
city.
true. There was a famine in the land, but the Arameans' army, they had it.
Okay.
Just like Hamas. Everybody else is starving, but the army got the food. Okay. Only for proven cures. They say, look, the biblical precedence is only when there's food, and food is not maybe going to heal them. It's certain. So they say, yes, any risk going to the Torah, but we got to know that this is a cure which has been proven to work. Other positions, other halachic authorities say, no. If we don't know, other halachic authorities, Rabbi Auerbach is the main voice contemporarily, he says, no, when the Torah says any risk, according to Rabbi Grzinski, we're risking 50%, I'm willing to go even for experimental treatments. Which means any risk, even when it's a total unknown, and he's willing to give that allowance, according to Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who's also a very contemporary rabbi. Let's read that final text, Max, text 15 on page 35.
The case of a seriously ill patient for whom the physicians see no hope of survival using standard drugs is similar to a case of a last recourse surgery, which is permitted even though there is a risk that the patient will die immediately as a result. It is therefore permitted to use an unproven drug in this case.
So he says, we're already in the last recourse, we're willing to try it. Okay. Now what we see over here is that there is variation in the halachic opinion. What do we do about this? There's no right, there's no wrong. Each of these rabbis are real, proper authorities, and they're coming with precedents, and they're coming to their best understanding based on what we have. None of them are going against any earlier proven precedent. So these are just different opinions. Practically speaking, what's going to happen, if any of us ever have a question, God forbid, we need to go to a rabbi, there's not one easy answer. The rabbi is going to have to understand precedent. They're going to have to understand the rationale behind every single one of these opinions, and then they're going to have to understand your case to the best of their ability. What is your case? What is the unique specificities of your case? What are the considerations? And they'll try to come up with the most Torah-based, where exactly you fit in between all these different opinions in your case. So a rabbi is not going to take you through the whole backstory that I just took you through. But this is the basic, these are the key ideas a rabbi is going to be looking at to help you with a ruling. Now, let's just quickly apply this to the case of Rada, and then we'll close it for the night. All right? In the case of Rada, let's go back. This was not her last name in the video. Okay, I'm not sure what that is.
It's the last name in the.
In the text?
Well, you can see that her father is writing an article, his last name is.
This, not Patel or something. Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, they call it
Patel in the video. Now, let's think. Hayesha. Is her situation considered a Hayesha? And again, if it's Hayesha, then there's a lot more allowance to play around. Is her condition Hayesha or not? How long does she have to live?
More than 12, more than.
More than 12 months. So according to the opinion that says you need to have a terminal illness that's taking you out in less than 12 months, she does not qualify for the risks that Torah is willing to give you for Hayesha. But according to the opinion that all you need is a terminal illness, yeah, she's got terminal illness.
Yeah. but they
So
also
here
said-
you see.
They also said that in 4 months, that's the last point that they can.
Oh, that's a great point we did not have time to cover in this class. What if they will survive for more than 12 months, but the time to act is now? That is a great, great point, and that is one of the fine prints we couldn't touch upon in the hour and 45 minutes we have over here.
Making the same point, yes.
Yeah, so there you go, for sure. In every single one of these things, if you think about it, you'll find so many more avenues where we got to ask more. And that's where the sea of halachic literature gets so rich, going down every single one of these avenues, as throughout history we've actually in real life bumped into all these different scenarios and different variables. But the basic point is, if we want to keep it generally to what we learned today, according to this opinion, she would not make the cut to do a risky move for Hayesha, but according to Rabbi Kook, who says any terminal illness, then she would be allowed to do experimental drugs according to Judaism. So if her parents are Jewish, they go to a rabbi, are we allowed to do this? The rabbis have to make a ruling where, which opinion we're going to follow in this case. To the next point, what level of risk are we willing to take? The treatment that she is going to do, is there a 50% chance of success, or any risk? We don't know. So therefore, according to the position that you need a 50% chance of success, you're out. They would say don't do an experimental drug. According to the opinion that you're allowed to do any risk, they would say you're allowed to do it, any risk. So again, over here, coming down the line, even if you're going to say she qualifies for Hayesha, what about the risk level? We don't know what the risk level is, and therefore, they'll only get a yes to do it according to opinion. They're allowed to take any risk. And then, does any risk need to be a proven cure or experimental treatment? When she's not looking at she's not looking at a proven cure, she's looking at experimental treatments. So again, it would only work according to this opinion of experimental treatments. So you're seeing over here how there's so many considerations. And at every single step down the line, some authorities will say, yes, it's a good thing to do, or will allow you to do it if you want to do it. Sometimes they'll say, no, you can't do it. And every single case is different. Whew. The final line, which I want to share with you before we go, is this is the final point. There's no one halachic consensus on the issue, because real life is so complex. Every single case has their own nuances and situations and specificities. Each case must be evaluated by an expert authority on Jewish law. But what we got a little bit of a taste of is what goes on behind the scenes when we go to a rabbi and we say, I'm facing a medical, ethical dilemma. What should I do over here? They're just going to tell you do it or not do it. Or they'll say you don't need to do it, but you could do it. They'll give you some answer. But here we have a little bit of a taste of what goes into that decision. And the idea is that this is a big thing. As much as when you go to a doctor for medicine, there's also the idea, especially by complex situations, to seek out a rabbi and make sure we're getting a competent halachic answer. And dear friends, with that we conclude overtime. Thank you all so much for letting us do that. But thank you all. God bless you all. And what a wonderful start we got over here. Next week, moving on to the next topic of extending life. And I just want to share with you, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any thoughts, any questions. Let's continue the conversation. And we've got lots more wild rides coming up. So God bless you all. Have a wonderful evening. And we'll see you all soon.
Company